How did that teacher get fired for at your school? Male substitute teacher that taught regularly at my Catholic high school who wasn't fired, but banned from teaching in our female PE class after we reported him for repeatedly instructing us to stretch in positions that were sexual/inappropriate. For example, he asked us to bend over with both hands against the wall and shake our hips back and forth. Bonus, he subbed for my geography class the following year, and during one of his classes I asked to go to the bathroom to take care of my feminine issue. He asked me what kind of feminine issue specifically. I was too embarrassed to say it was my period, so I said, well, you know. To which he replied, yes, but I want to hear you say it out loud. Creepy. Ike. An hour before the state championship football game, the head football coach/pet teacher got a student who wasn't on the team to come up to him and pretend to shoot him. He used fake blood and everything. No one knew it was going to happen, and his own son was on the team. We lost the game too. I need more details. Why? WTF. From what I heard, he had been emphasizing all week about commitment and perseverance and carrying on if someone falls. It was supposed to be inspirational. He was a pet teacher, so it's not like he was intellectually strong. This is such an irresponsible, misguided, insanely stupid and a shattered thing. To do that for some reason, it has me laughing really hard that anyone could be such an idiot. Not just that teacher, but the principal. He'd gotten wind that he might be fired because of less than ideal job performance. So he decided to drum up sympathy by belly stabbing himself in the men's room and blaming a student. Said student was arrested, but the police were immediately suspicious of his story when they noticed his shirt was unharmed. In other words, whoever stabbed him courteously lifted up his shirt beforehand so as not to tear a hole in it. He wound up being forced to resign, in addition to getting probation and a heavy fine. Bruh, he didn't go to jail. He tried to put a minor in prison for a long time just to preserve his job. She didn't get fired but quit. Some students in class found out she miscarried and started hounding her till she broke down and cried under her desk. It was 7th or 8th grade. Kids are so damn cruel. Little psychopaths. Smart enough to know exactly what meanness to say. Dumb enough to actually say it. My math teacher was a volunteer first responder in New York. She left school to help out during 9/11 and was fired for not showing back up for 2 weeks. This one's just sad. Headmaster, where is the maths teacher? Secretary, they died during the fires on 9/11 trying to save office workers as a first responder. Headmaster, what? They're fired. Secretary, I mean yeah, literally. I was in elementary school in the late 90s when our school finally got hooked up with internet. I don't know if it was readily available information back then that your history could be accessed, but we had a teacher watching child porn who got caught because he didn't clear his history. So many of the answers on this post are just child porn and banging students. It's worrying. Yeah, I'm currently pregnant and the thought of my kid going to daycare or school terrifies me. Lol. I don't want to be a helicopter mom, but people are wild. GK/V teacher that everyone loved. Knew he was a geek and owned it. Caught in a predator sting trying to solicit underage girls. The kicker was a spring school levy was coming up. Local police conspired with the school district to hide the charges for 3 weeks until the levy was passed. Someone substituted his class for 3 weeks. Yay, everyone was both devastated and pissed. The district ended the school year early. Can someone explain to me what levy means in this context? In the US, millages for special purposes can be added onto the existing millage rate, at which property taxes are levied, by multiplying the taxable property value by the millages, via ballot initiatives. If voters approve, the millage will be money from that millage, goes to the special purpose. These typically include things like additional funding for local schools, parks and rec departments, fire departments, and other public works functions. Knock-a-cob 847 school was worried that voters would reject the millage at the polls if they heard the school had employed a pedophile. Their logic was probably sound, ethics aside. He didn't come to parent-teacher interview night. The next day, He was late for class and crashed his pickup into a brick sign outside the school. Cops showed up obviously and allegedly he blew twice the legal limit. He called the principal a cunt as he was taken away. TBF. Most principals are cunts, Your Honor. That C principal is why I drink. Apostrophe. I sentence you to freedom. Middle school coach. Accused of child sexual abuse. Before he could be charged, he jumped in front of a train. On Michigan's sex offender registry there's Louis Gunda. He was a middle school gym teacher with a history of being a creep with girls. I remember hearing my older sisters talking about him and telling their girlfriends to steer clear of him. I briefly dated the woman who actually put him in prison. He grabbed her hand and forced her to jerk him off in his office adjacent to the locker room. During his trial, women came out of the woodwork to say he'd done things to them too. How was the relationship with her? One of my high school teachers was caught on To Catch a Predator. Which episode? Asking the real questions. Middle school theater. She played massive favorites in a way that even made the favorites uncomfortable. So all the students hated her. However, all the adults, my parents and my friends' parents, at least, thought we were exaggerating because, yeah no, theater. I assume someone in the grade after mine got a responsible adult to listen. Or the school got tired of her doing Grease every single year. After she was fired she started a weird cult where she would speak to a spirit named Maca for people. So I feel pretty validated on the whole calling her crazy thing. Had a teacher charging parents extra money for a field trip. Was pocketing the extra money. That's just big business. High school gym teacher. Apparently he showed up to a hotel room expecting to bang a 13 years old, but got busted by the cops instead. No. See, I thought if she was a real 13-year-old, but I didn't think she was. But if she was, then I wanted to come here just to warn her about the dangers of meeting grown men. Because they may not have her best interests in mind. Apostrophe. Nailed it. She wanted the kids to cheat on the reading test so she can win a pizza party and a trophy. After reading so many of these stories, this one is practically wholesome in comparison. Yeah, that's the reason why I shared this one. Good-looking math teacher had a reputation of hooking up with senior girls, like days after graduation. He did this almost every year. People even started to make bets on who Mr. S was going to hook up with this year. There was nothing technically illegal about it because they were all 18 and graduated. But it got to the point where parents were calling in and saying they didn't want their daughters in his class. They were finally able to fire him when he showed up to work drunk. My high school had a sub that they used frequently who was eventually fired for repeated instances of pressuring girls to join him in storage closets to listen to his poetry. Luckily I wasn't one of those girls. But once when he was subbing for my chemistry class he kept interrupting my work to ask me to play tic-tac-toe with him and touching my shoulder. I wonder what was worse, the poetry or the sexual pressure. Not a teacher, but my middle school / high school bus driver was fired for driving drunk. Driving the bus drunk. Often. The bus driver I had in 5th grade was a total nightmare. He'd get us to school on time, but we'd often get home very late because he'd stop the bus to have screaming meltdowns. This was a bus of K5 kids, and while sometimes we could get chatty or rambunctious, no one was doing dangerous or delinquent stuff. Most days, we'd just get on the bus, sit down and chat with friends, and wait to be dropped off. But that was too much for this lunatic, and if he felt that kids were talking too much, or somehow being disrespectful, he'd pull the bus over and scream at us. At length, he'd scare the really little kids, and if you tried to apologize or to stand up to him, he'd just get louder and angrier. He never touched any of us, but he'd get so mad, we'd worry he was going to shake or spank us. He'd insist that everyone be perfectly still and silent, real easy for a terrified kindergarten kid. Right, and every little thing he perceived as going against that order would start the screaming again, and restart the clock on the wait for him to start driving again. We got home late often. A few times I remember getting home around the same time as my dad, who had a pretty long commute to and from his 9-to-5 job. I have no earthly idea why none of the parents ever said anything about this. but us kids were too terrified to tell on him. Toward the end of the year, I think a few of us did, I turned him in. To save my own hide, my mom started yelling at me for getting home late, like I had any autonomy as a 12-year-old who rode the damn bus home from the next town over. And I just told her he liked to stop and scream at us, and he wasn't brought back the following year. As an adult, I have a lot of questions for the adults in this situation, and I sincerely doubt that any of their answers will impress me. The dude clearly hated his life, but that's no excuse to take it out on a bunch of helpless, trapped kids. You didn't live in Central PA, did you? Because you just gave me some repressed flashbacks of my rural elementary bus route. Crazy both you and you / Koflo had to deal with the same thing in the same state. Small world. Maybe Pennsylvania just breeds insane bus drivers. 1. Our principal in high school. Her husband cheated on her with another teacher that worked there, and they went through a nasty divorce. Next thing you know, she's making her way through our football team. I think she slept with 3 of them, and ended up dating one for quite a while. Oddly, I don't recall if she was ever fired or left on her own. 2. Music teacher. Also in high school. Cheated on his wife with a middle school music teacher. Then cheated on her with a student that had graduated. Cheated on her with a student and got her pregnant and married her. Last I heard he still worked there and was with another recently graduated student. 3. I'm sure there are more, but the last one I can remember was our office secretary in middle school who also taught art class a couple times a week. She was actually a really great lady, but unfortunately for her our school got picked to be on an episode of Sally Jess Raphael or Ricky Lake. Something like that. They had some random people come in throughout the week and ask to pick up a student, and this lady just signed them out. It aired. They interviewed her, and she got fired. One of the elementary school teachers at the district I went to got arrested for making his class worship him like he was a cult leader. He was totally bonkers. Elementary school? What a waste of divinity. Gotta start them young. Otherwise they start thinking for themselves by middle school. Sound like the plot to Cult of the Lambs. She used to come to school drunk and try to get us to convert to Scientology. I still don't know a single thing about Scientology because no one could comprehend WTF she was talking about. Scientology doesn't make sense anyways, so I'm sure she explained it just fine.